Good afternoon and welcome to the College of Environmental Science and Forestry and Earth Week here at SUNY ESF. We like to joke around and say celebrating for a day isn't good enough for us. We have to celebrate for a whole week. But really, I think we at ESF celebrate the environment 365 days of the year. That's another thing we say. Another casualty of the COVID-19 crisis is, of course, that we can't be together to celebrate Earth Week. I know a lot of events can be found on our website that are continuing in the virtual space, but I do really miss seeing you out on the quad and all the great activities that our students and faculty designed to celebrate our planet. So this is a particularly important Earth Week and Earth Day tomorrow as the 50th anniversary of when an actual day on the calendar was designated Earth Day in recognition of taking care of our planet. I thought what I would try to do today in this session is provide some personal recollections. Many of you probably know this or don't know this. I'm 59 years old. So in 1970, when Earth Day was created, I was a 10-year-old kid. And even at age 10, I think I can argue that I was an environmentalist. I remember pretty clearly walking along with my friends and them ripping open a candy bar and throwing the wrapper on the ground, and me reprimanding them and telling them that you got to pick up that wrapper. We don't litter in Washington State. And I grew up out west in Washington State, and if you've been to Washington, it's just a stunningly beautiful state. In a lot of ways, I was insulated from a lot of the environmental degradation that was going on that sort of prodded our legislatures to create Earth Day. And I spent a lot of time growing up in the Columbia River Gorge of Washington State and Oregon, and my dad was an avid hiker, and I think that it was those values of my father imparted to me the value of the natural world. He would travel a lot in his job, which I'll say a little bit more about, and so I generally wouldn't see him much, except he made sure he'd come home on the weekends, and we had to go hiking on one of the days of the weekend. And so that was much of the time I got to spend with my father, and I cherish those memories, and just being able to grow up in this beautiful place. Our home was literally next to an old growth Douglas fir forest that went on for hundreds of miles, and I'd go out of the house early in the morning and spend the entire day out in the forest and come in at the end of the day when my mom hollered for me to come to dinner. As there was this growing sense at the time that we were destroying the planet and in the process very negatively impacting human health, there was an ad that was put together by the Ad Council working with the Keep America Beautiful Coalition. And this day and age might be considered culturally insensitive, but you could not escape this public service ad. If you watched any amount of TV, you would inevitably see it. And so sort of as a cultural or historical context on the emergence of the environmental movement, I thought I'd share this video, and anyone my age remembers this very distinctly.
Some people have a deep, abiding respect for the natural beauty that was once this country. And some people don't. People start pollution. People can stop it.
And that here was a really powerful message that what is shown in the video, which is very real, the environmental degradation was very real from the time, was deeply concerning. And this ad was very effective, I think, in building a sentiment that we needed to do a better job of taking care of the planet. Like I said, growing up in this sort of pristine wilderness, I was somewhat insulated from a lot of what was shown in the video. But my parents actually grew up in Syracuse. They met at Syracuse University. And I came back east with them when I was young to visit my mother's parents in Rochester. And I remember distinctly going to downtown Buffalo and having a panic attack because I couldn't breathe. And I couldn't breathe because, number one, it was hot and humid. I wasn't used to that. But you literally couldn't see but a couple hundred feet through the smog. And I just felt like I was suffocating. And that was the reality of that time and why it was so important that Earth Day was created and we start to address these problems. So some other personal history that led to an appreciation for me of the environment was my father was the director of the Environmental Services Division of a large paper company called Crown Zellerbach. And his job as a chemical engineer was to develop technology that would allow paper mills to clean up their act and be compliant with the rules established by the brand new Environmental Protection Agency, which was actually established under Richard Nixon when he was president. In addition, my father was part of a team, and it was his impetus to establish what I believe was the first paper recycling plant in the country. And I do remember stacks of it just took newspapers at the time, but seeing stacks of these newspapers, and as only my father would do, neatly tied and stacked, to be taken to the recycling plant. Now everyone in this small town worked at the paper mill, how they would collect the newspapers. I think ultimately they were out ahead of their time, and they had to close that plant because they couldn't get enough used paper and newspaper to feed the plant. But fast forward from back then to 50 years forward, and I think you can say that we've made a lot of progress across a number of sectors. There's still certainly a long way to go, and the pressing issue now, of course, is climate change and global warming. But we have, I think everyone knows, been a bit set back in regards to environmental policy and environmental regulation by a current lack of leadership at the federal level. There are some interesting things going on during this time of COVID-19 with everyone kind of sheltering in place. Although I have to say it's been pretty busy down on the hiking trails down in Labrador Hollow by my house. But nature's starting to move back into spaces that are normally heavily occupied by human beings, and we're seeing things like turtles. Sea turtles are able to reproduce at higher levels. Coyotes are seen walking around big city streets, and these kinds of things as a reminder that nature is there, it's always there, and it can only be held back so much. We have a real visionary environmentalist on our campus, and that's Dr. Robin Kimmerer. She's a distinguished teaching professor and the director of the Center for Native Peoples and the Environment. And she's shared a few words for us that I'm going to play for you in a minute just now from her home about Earth Day. So here's Robin Kimmerer.
I was asked to give a little bit of a reflection on Earth Day because here it is, Earth Week, probably the most important celebration for Stumpies. And I like to think about Earth Week activities on the quad, all busy. And I look forward to next year when we'll be able to do all of that together again. And for Earth Day, I was intending to be speaking at a big rally, to be part of a global movement for the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. But instead, I'm celebrating with you in the woods, by the pond, in isolation. But if you listen a second and look around, you see that we're not alone at all. There's the list of the red-winged blackbird, the bullfrogs in the pond, song sparrows off in the field, we're not alone. And there's a lot of solace in that. And instead of bemoaning not observing Earth Day with thousands of your closest friends in the streets, I think we can look at it differently this year, because in a strange way, we are celebrating Earth Day in one of the most profound ways that we possibly can, by giving Mother Earth a break. Because as you know, from the start of the shutdown, we know that the air is cleaner. We have surpassed all carbon reduction targets. The world is more peaceful. Animals are returning to places and to practices that our overwhelming presence had prohibited in the past. Elk on the beaches, there are coyotes in the streets. And in the midst of heartbreaking human loss, we're paused. We're paused in extraction, in needless taking. And I even saw an article that the Earth itself is quieter, that seismologists have registered that the Earth is not as vibrating with all of our noise as it has been in the past. And so much so that we could do what my Potawatomi elders always asked us to do, which is to listen to Mother Earth. And maybe now we can. In this pause, we're listening to the lessons that were being offered of the interconnectedness of everything, that we humans are not exceptional or superior, but we are obviously subject to the same biological laws as every other species. I don't know about you, but I am learning to treasure really simple things. We're reminded of our humility. We are reminded of the power of the very smallest of beings. We're reminded how much we need each other, and we're reminded of gratitude. And Indigenous cultures all over the world are known as cultures of gratitude. And my own Potawatomi people always teach that gratitude is people's first responsibility. And here, when we stand in the territory of the Onondaga Nation, our Haudenosaunee neighbors, we know that they too, through the Thanksgiving address, place high value on human people giving gratitude. And you know, the pandemic might lead us to focus on everything that we don't have in this moment, everything that we've lost. And that, of course, is a natural impulse. And we do have losses, and there's a lot of suffering. And I think of my own parents, elders at 90 years old, who were hospitalized with COVID-19. And we can turn in that other direction too, as my parents have been doing, to what we do have. My mom and dad, now released from the hospital, they are among the recovering, speak with such gratitude every day to focus on what we do have. We have sunrise, we have birdsong, we have art and music to lift our spirits, imagination and intellect to solve problems. We have so much love for each other that supports the sacrifices that we have to make. We have this breath of fresh spring air. And I don't know about you, but I have never been so conscious of breath. We have soil and water and farmers and nurses and doctors and grocery workers. We have daffodils blooming, family and friends. And we have my camera woman here, who is my daughter, 9 months pregnant. We have the opportunity for an Earth Day baby. There's still that chance. And as ESFers, we have our meaningful work of caring for people and for planet. We have a lot to be grateful for.
Thank you, Dr. Kimmer. You know, I just so cherish that you're a member of the ESF community and a member of the world community. We're so lucky to have you and your words of wisdom. And I just love that vision of a pause and the planet taking a pause as well. And I'd heard about that geological data as well. It's really quite interesting, and it speaks to the profound impact that human activity has on the planet. And I too think that people will come out of this with a greater appreciation for what's really important in life, which is our loved ones, our fellow citizens, and our planet and our natural resources. I've been spending probably no more time than I ever do outside, but it's a lot busier out there now, and lots of people coming down, as I mentioned, to hike in Labrador Hollow. I've been going and on my mountain bike with Bramble up at Amberg, and lots of the citizens of Tully are enjoying our property at Amberg. And I can't help but think that one of the byproducts of that is going to be a greater appreciation for nature. And I'm seeing not just parents out in the woods, I'm seeing whole families out in the woods and really enjoying being there together. So I think there's a renaissance in closeness that is going to come out of this as a consequence of what we've been going through. So I'm going to wind it up here and would be happy to take questions if there are any, but I do want to say that Laura Crandall's been working hard to offer, I think she's calling it a half Earth Day on October 22nd, when we expect all of you to be back on campus and we can celebrate the planet together and in some level of proximity, I hope. And I also want to just give you a little teaser that there is going to be a special proclamation tomorrow about ESF, and it's just a wonderful gesture. So stay tuned. I'm not going to completely spoil the surprise, but I'll pause there and look down at the iPad, see if there's any comments or questions. Just a lot of thank yous and happy Earth Weeks and everyday Earth Day ESF from Laura Crandall. Very nice. And so I'm not seeing any specific questions, but I so cherish the opportunity to have been a part of the ESF community, and I hope and great relieved to hear that Robin's parents have recovered, and I hope you and your families remain well. Take care.